Great. So hello and welcome to the latest PIQ webinar in our Intelligence for the Future series. I'm Alison Jones. I'm Director of Practical Inspiration Publishing and host of the Extraordinary Business Book Club. It's very, very good to have you here. And the aim of these webinars, which we started back in April, is to explore how work is changing in these extraordinary times, and also give us some insights and strategies and skills to help navigate that transformation better. And if you have a particular topic that you would like us to cover or any feedback on how we can make these sessions even more useful, then do drop me a line afterwards, alison@alisonjones.com. But I'm going to introduce today's speaker, who is Nick Suckley, one of the UK's leading entrepreneurs in digital media. And over a 20-year period, Nick has launched 4 digital specialist businesses. He's sold 3 of them. Most recently, his multi-award-winning digital media consultancy, Agenda 21, to Be Heard Group PLC for 12 million, which is quite nice work if you can get it, isn't it? Early on, he launched Media 21 as one of the UK's first digital media agencies and sold it to Grey London at the height of the dot-com boom, just 18 months after its formation. And he was a founding investor in digital creative hot shop Glue London, which sold to Aegis Group in 2005 for 14 million, and he launched and incubated Data Shaker, an analytics software business where he was instrumental in securing several rounds of VC funding from Seed Cloud Ventures. So he's been there at every stage of the process, and nowadays he's a much sought after consultant for media and technology entrepreneurs in particular, and C-level executives, advising them on opportunistic corporate build strategies and how to avoid the costly mistakes frequently associated with rapid growth and a changing marketplace. And he's also, and I can't point to it because the camera does fun things, but he's the author of Start, Scale, Sell, published by Practical Inspiration a couple of weeks ago, which is an extraordinarily good book. So welcome, Nick. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm going to hand straight over to you because I know that you've got a presentation for us. So I'll mute myself and I think you can share your screen.
I'll just do the slideshow now. So one more click and we should be good to go. Yeah, there we are. So the thing I was asked to do was kind of crazily the upside of a downturn. And it's just quite interesting. I was looking at companies that have been formed and have started during a downturn. And it's companies like Groupon and Airbnb, Netflix and Microsoft. So there's quite a long spread of companies that have managed to start and get themselves established when things are not going so good. But what I wanted to talk about was really to pull out, well, is there an upside to a downturn? How do you begin to spot them? How do you take advantage? You know, I think a big part of what's happening at the moment is everybody's thinking about a downturn as being a negative thing. It's synonymous with destruction of the economy, but there are still opportunities out there, and that's what I want to sort of look at. But first, I just wanted to do a little bit about, a bit about me. I won't dwell on it, but 20 years, 4 companies, 3 exits and 1 fundraise. So I've lived through probably 3 or 4 of the last downturns, and I've certainly got the battle scars to show for it. Predominantly where I work is in the area where advertising, technology, consumers and media overlap. So that's the bit that I've sort of the thread that runs through everything. And as Alison said, I wrote a book. That's me in my kitchen a few weeks ago. And what's mad about the book was I wrote it obviously pre-COVID, and we sent it to press pre-COVID. So just as we were going to press, I managed to get about a page written just to pull out, well, oh my God, what's going on and what does it mean and what's different? So the timing's been sort of kind of fortunate, maybe a bit of an upside in the downturn to me, because I thought the book was mainly going to be about scaling companies and selling. And given where we are now in the economy, I think it's going to be far more about people starting as people are losing jobs and looking for opportunities. But 75 lessons learned, 75 battle scars, and each one's an important lesson learned. But it's about downturns, and each downturn is different. There are similarities, but they're often characterized by just shed loads of uncertainty and expectations from people really being about the downside rather than the upside. It's all doom and gloom. It's all bad news. And the media doesn't help because they will pick up all the job losses rather than job creation. And I was really startled during the early days of COVID, where companies were laying people off and it was reported on the news, but nobody was talking about Tesco recruiting thousands of people or Amazon recruiting thousands of people. So there is a degree to which the media persists this pessimism. And I rather naively think when you look at our GDP figures, our GDP is down something like 10%, I think, for Q2. it still means that 90% of the economy is functioning in a pretty much normal-ish kind of way. The sky isn't falling in, and that means that if 90% of the economy is functioning in some shape or form as normal, there's opportunity there. There's no two ways about it. So I graduated in 1991. So that's Thelma and Louise. That is Beauty and the Beast, my favourite Disney film, actually. My daughter's 16 now, we'll watch it. And Silence of the Lambs. So it was the recession that led, that followed on from the 80s boom. So there were no jobs going for graduates, and I had to work really, really hard. I was trying to get a job in advertising, and I fought and persisted and harassed and hassled. I didn't let go as like a dog with a bone. But I got a rather menial job in advertising, but it meant that I had a foot on the ladder. It was tough, it really was. But what it meant was that a few years later, when the economy was picking up in the mid-90s, there was nobody with 2 or 3 years experience that I had. So people at my level, there were very few. We were in really, really high demand. So my cohort started getting really big pay rises. I remember at one point I moved to the Daily Express. I took a 10 grand pay rise and I must have been 27. I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous in the mid-90s. So the upside to the downturn was I managed to make something out of it, but the benefit came through during the recovery. Yeah, that's me on the right. The obligatory fire escape shot for a very young and trusting ad agency in 1998. So that was Media 21. And we started just as the dot-com boom was taking off. And we caught the wave, pure fluke, absolute fluke. So all of these dot-com companies that were raising millions of pounds of investors' money, my little business, Media 21, we were selling picks and shovels during the gold rush. So we caught the wave and we were up and done and sold within 18 months. And again, the mistake that we made was that we thought the dot-com boom was going to carry on forever, but of course it didn't. And I don't know how many of you remember boo.com, quite an interesting story of just complete excess Concorde flights and ridiculous amounts of money raised, and an idea that was arguably, for me, 10 years too early, because you look at boohoo.com now, which is obviously no relation to the original boo.com. They're doing really well. But we sold, I think it was about 2 weeks before the NASDAQ peaked. And the dot-com bubble, when it burst, absolutely decimated my business, to the point where we would leave work on a Friday and we would have customers that would come into work on a Monday and they simply wouldn't be there. It's not that they weren't there, the phone was dead. There was just nobody to speak to. So we had companies folding around us and disappearing, owing us money. And the challenge I had was that as a young startup where the uptick meant that we could be a bit crap and still do really well, man, we didn't have as good a grip on our finances. The downside was that we ended up rolled up by our parent company into a sister company we didn't have a leg to stand on, we didn't have any choice. But looking back, if I'd had a better grip on my finances, we were in viable shape, we could have kept on going. And the irony was that we could, if we'd been in better shape going through the boom and when we hit the bust, we probably could have weathered that storm better. And there is a lesson in that, to me, an irony that we were back in profit 6 months after we'd rolled into our parent. So it was very doable. So again, not quite an upside for us, but an upside for the parent company at the time. We were a great opportunity for them. They took us over. It didn't cost them a penny, and we built them a really good business. So they made a great opportunity. 2008, the credit crunch was different again. So it was almost, looking back, like a slow motion downturn and recovery. It was just a long, slow drag. And what we found then, and what was very different to the dot-com bubble bursting, was that our customers didn't cut spending altogether. They just cut back. So we found ourselves in a position where we were working as hard as ever with smaller budgets. So we were effectively just running to stand still. And it meant that we weren't really getting anywhere. It was a very frustrating 3 or 4 years. But it meant that when the uptick happened, and it took us a while to realize we were in the uptick, when clients, our advertiser customers, started spending more money, we were very efficient, and it meant that all of that extra income we were making went straight to our bottom line. So we slingshot out of the back of the credit crunch, incredibly profitable, very efficient, and we seemed to slingshot out the other side. So the question is, what is the upside to a downturn? And I'm struck most recently by the fortunes of different companies going through the credit crunch. So you compare the likes of Thomas Cook, and I know Thomas Cook didn't die during the coronavirus. They were arguably a victim of the credit crunch, and they were one of the zombie companies. I don't know if you've heard of companies that shamble along because interest rates are so low they can borrow. Arguably, they should have died and been put out of their misery years ago. But you look at a company like Jet2. Jet2 came along in the last 10 years, and they're thriving. So whereas Thomas Cook were debt-ridden and shambling along, not really delivering very well for customers, Jet2 have done really, really well and are thriving. Similar story with New Look and Boohoo.com. That New Look have overexpanded. They arguably have taken on too much debt. Boohoo being a very, very well, notwithstanding the scandal that arose due to their supply chain in Leicester. But they are able to take on, I think they've just taken on, I think it was Monsoon. They've taken on a few high street retail brands for them to move into older customer segments. And again, more latterly, Cineworld, loaded with debt. They were struggling before the close down. And you compare their fortunes to a business like Netflix. Again, Netflix customers, I don't have the figures to hand, but their customers have been going through the roof. So what's going on? Well, they're operating in the same categories, but those that are failing versus those that are succeeding are arguably those that are delivering what their customers want. And they're able to focus on that because they're not focusing on things like servicing their debt, or they've got shareholders that are kicking up a fuss. They're able to single-mindedly focus on customers and to deploy themselves and deliver what it is that they want. Just a quick word on debt. I say usually to be avoided. It's in the book I talk about having a war chest, that every company really should have 6 months' money so that if you don't earn another penny, you can still run. Because you see too many companies that are aligned so that when things are good, they're able to manage their debt, but provided things remain good. Once things start to take a turn for the worst, they're really struggling, and that has a cascading effect where they become beholden to their creditors, they lose focus, they lose sight of their customers, and they just hit this downward vicious circle. Years ago, in my last agency, Agenda 21, we had a guy, private equity guy, he said that we were undercapitalized. And what he meant by that was that there was an appropriate level of debt for businesses to have. I went back to him and said, well, I think the appropriate level of debt for my business is zero, because I don't need to borrow a penny. We can just grow out of cash flow. He meant that we should be borrowing money to grow. And of course, he meant borrow from him, because that's how he makes his money. So I don't necessarily mean don't take on debt at all, but I mean be very, very careful. Borrow to invest and borrow for the right reasons, but think about the downside, not just being reliant when times are good, because that means that when things turn bad, you end up in all sorts of trouble. So some of these lessons are in the book. So how do you get yourself into shape when you're able to take advantage of these opportunities when things are in a downturn? And I would argue that going into a downturn in the best shape you can be is the best way of taking advantage of the opportunities that arise, because it means that you can A, see them, and B, do something about them. So how do you get yourself and keep yourself into the best shape possible? So be brutally honest about how much business is on the horizon. What I mean by that is, as business owners, we have a tendency to be optimistic. It's part of the job that we do. We have to be optimistic, otherwise when things get tough, we'd slit our wrists. But I think there is a tendency to think when things start getting worse that something's going to come along. And for me, the litmus test is if you have something, I call it the client X test. If you have something like client X, Y, or Z on your business plan, and Client X being a piece of business that I don't know who they are, and I don't know where they're going to come from, and I don't know when they're going to happen. Just something that is pie in the sky. Get rid of it now. I only forecast named clients that I know about that are in the bag on my business plan, and it means that I'm only forecasting real income. And what it means then is that I can only then forecast and allocate my resources towards real and realistic business that's going to come through the door. So it means I'm never in a situation where I have too many people or I've allocated resources wrongly. In my business, and I know not all businesses are the same, it does then mean that if I do pick up more custom than I expect, I do have to hire people. But in my business, it's a people business, so you can pick up people relatively quickly. So it's not so much of a problem. And I would rather be under-resourced for a small period of time rather than over-resourced and struggling to cut costs. So the Client X thing, I think, is really important. I remember years and years ago, we had a client, we called it Project Sheep, Project Bar, which was British Airways Bar. And it was a lead that we had, but we took what was realistically a business lead, but we started building it into our business plan. And it was a killer mistake because we started getting accustomed to having that level of income, 6, 7, 8 months down the horizon. And we were way optimistic because that business simply wasn't there. So we made the wrong choices too early. And because we were too optimistic for too long, it meant that we didn't cut our costs quickly enough. So it was kind of naive and optimistic on our part. But the worst thing then is having too many people around, because that kills morale. People find mischief when they're not that busy. So people hate uncertainty. So I think you have a responsibility to give the bad news quickly and to get on with the bad news and be honest about how much with yourself, about how much business really is on the horizon. Which leads on to next lesson. Staff really, really hate uncertainty. So with my first business, when the dot-com bubble burst, we decided to do things properly and hold a consultation process because we were doing maybe 15 people. And midway through the consultation process, the guys came to us and just said, look, it's killing us. We know that people are going to go. Can you just tell us who they are so we can get on with it and make some plans? Because having 2 weeks of this is just awful. And what it meant was that during those 2 weeks, all of our staff were unsettled because everybody re-examined their job. So having that uncertainty, now I understand that recruitment law means that we have to go through certain processes, but I think doing nothing to create uncertainty more than you need to is fundamentally important, because one of the characteristics of employees is that the good staff tend to be the ones that can go first because they will find jobs elsewhere. So you lose your better people, and the ones that are often left behind are the ones that struggle to find a job because coincidentally they're not as good. So again, you get left with a lack of control around the people that you want to keep versus the ones that you're maybe less concerned with leaving when you do have to make those cuts. So it's better get rid of the leavers, and then you can sit down with the stayers, the people are saying, and you can say, okay, that's it, we're done. The people that have gone have gone. It's very sad that they've had to go, but that's it. There are no more cuts. Let's get back to work and let's focus on rebuilding the business, and this is what we're going to do. And it just gives people that certainty. I know it's naive and it sounds obvious, but there have been so many companies I've come across that have not done that. And that message of, okay, let's get back to work is really, really important in my view. Showtime. So this is, if you've gone through all of that, and it's very easy to run a business and be a CEO and MD when times are good. You get paid and you earn your money when things are bad. And when things are bad is when you really show your mettle. And if you go through all of that, you've got rid of the people, you've got your business into a good shape, you don't want to then suffer death through 1,000 cuts. If you've gone through all of that pain. And what I mean by that is your people, and this is across every industry, your people pay a disproportionate amount of interest and attention to your demeanor. And you may not realize this, but they do. When you walk into work, when you're behaving at work, I had an old business partner for me. When he was stressed, he'd be sitting in the corner of the office because he hated everyone, and he'd be banging on his keyboard going, "Oh my bloody hell." And the whole office would stop and they'd look over at him and they would be mortified with his behavior. And I'd just look at them and I'd just go, "It's okay, it's fine." And people pay a disproportionate amount of interest. So what I do, it doesn't matter whether I'm crying on the inside, I've had the worst day ever. I was walking up the stairs into work, and just before I stop, I take a breath and I walk through the door and I go, "It's showtime." And I go, "Morning team, how's everybody? Everybody okay?" And then I settle down to work and get on with it. And that's so important because your team pay so much importance to you. So showtime, through a downturn, you've got to lead by example. And I'm not saying be bright and breezy and hysterically smiling like a lunatic, but just things are okay. It's under control. Things are going to be all right. That's what people want to hear. Most people just want to go to work to do their job, and they want to know that things are okay. So tell them. Never, ever, ever, ever make a loss. You never, ever lose control. I learned this so much the hard way. Honestly, I can't tell you. So obviously, .com burst. We were decimated in losing clients, and it meant, partly because I didn't have a good enough control on my finances and the finance team, I didn't know whether we were making money or not. I sort of knew, but didn't. And what happened was we sold our company, and it meant that our parent company wouldn't tolerate the fact that we weren't making money. So they came and took charge, and I didn't have a leg to stand on, and they rolled us up into my sister company. So my company and my earnout disappeared overnight, and that was it. In fact, I had a New York lawyer come over in his sort of flashy suit and his brown brogues going, "Well, guys, we're going to have to close you down." Sorry, that's a New York accent, by the way. And yeah, I do Sunderland as well, because that's where I'm from. But we totally lost control of our business. So from hero to zero in the space of about 6 months. And we lost control of our business. And I never, ever want to have that again. So whether it's banks, whether it's creditors, whether it's your parent company, as long as you're not losing money, you're able to retain control of your business. And it also means psychologically, you can say, "Back off, leave me alone. We're making money. If you've got something to say, let's talk about it, but back off, get away from my business, because we're not in trouble." So that was a very, very hard lesson for us to learn, sadly. So coming out of credit crunch, that's going in, is maintaining your marketing. Now, obviously, I work in advertising, so of course I'm going to say that, but it's been thrown in quite sharp relief with me. I've been working with a company, a very, very good ad agency called Good Stuff, and they are unbelievably good at their own marketing in a B2B environment. They're very, very distinctive. So in a world of beige, in a world of bland, they stand out very much so. And what it means is that they have a good degree of inbound business. So all of my businesses, we've been tech businesses, so we've had to go out and find every single client. The work I do with Good Stuff, they turn away more business than they take on, and it's to do with the strength and distinctiveness of their marketing, that Good Stuff will get onto a pitch list with a potential customer just by dint of Good Stuff are an interesting agency. I want to hear what they've got to say. Let's get them on the short list and we'll have a look. So, and that's purely down to their marketing and their reputation. So it means that when you come out of the other side, if you've got a healthy, and I don't just mean a pipeline, but you've got a healthy profile in the wider industry, again, you're better able to take advantage of the opportunities that come up, rather than slugging it out with every other business that is bashing the phones and trying to get their 10 meaningful phone calls in every day. So don't be bland. Through or down, and again, it's very easy to cut your marketing spend during a downturn, because it's an obvious way of saving money. And very often the mistake a lot of companies make is they would rather save jobs and forego their marketing money. I would say every single time, get rid of a couple of people so you can maintain your marketing. It may cause you pain, but coming out of the other side, it will help you slingshot further out and more quickly. So don't be bland. Don't make the job harder than you need to for no good reason, and be distinctive, because it means that you will take advantage of coming out of the other side. So this is one of my last points, actually. So I have rattled through this a bit more quickly than normal, but we can go for a Q&A at the end. One of the things that characterises the pretty much every downturn is, I suspect we're in the recovery stage now of the COVID-19 recession. All of the media are still reporting job cuts and job losses. And the media are a very bad example. I would almost try and ignore them. But they are very, very late to the party, because particularly the BBC, they're not in the commercial world. So you only see the recovery in your rearview mirror. And you only see the recovery when you're well on the way through the recovery. So my argument is, if we are now at the point of view of the recovery, you've got to watch out for the prevailing mindset that says we're still in the downturn, there's still a lot of uncertainty. I would argue we're way beyond that. My head says recovery, my heart says Preston can't go on holiday, oh my goodness, we've still got to socially isolate. But what it means is that if you're well run, you can start to get yourself into the mindset of saying, oh, okay, well, maybe if I spend 10% of my time looking for opportunities, I could maybe do that. And it just gives you a bit of a different mindset. So I always try and give myself a bit of a reality check from now and again to say, well, okay, where are we? Where are we really? What does the data tell me? What does my business tell me, rather than GDP figures, which are 6 months out of date, or whatever the newscasters are telling us? So those that succeed and those that fail, and those that are able to look at the opportunities, I would argue that those that go into a downturn or a shock and are well run and are prepared for bad times are very, very well able to weather the storm. And instantly being part of that cohort of companies means you're doing really, really well, because you don't want to be a zombie. You want to be well run to go into it. So that's having an appropriate level of debt, having a good key on all of the levers that you use to run the business, a healthy pipeline. You're not exposed to one category or sector. You haven't got one client that's worth 80% of your business that could disappear overnight. You're well diversified. You're well spread. It is a good recipe. It means that going through the downturn, being able to focus on what's important. I talk in the book about the power of three, and it's a rather simplistic thing, but I said to myself, over the next 6 months, if there are only 3 things that I do, what are they? Rather than trying to do everything. If I look back in December and I've only done 3 things really well, what are they? Well, I want to get this, I want to do that, and I want to do that. Everything else then is a distraction. Focus on that. It means that you're not going to get distracted by all of the noise, and there's a lot of noise at the moment, but it means that you can stay focused on what's important. And the reason that's important is you're then able to see, and me saying be brave doesn't help. What I would say is, when you recognize that you're into a downturn, don't be brave. Give up 5% of your time to being brave, or to do things that are characteristics of being brave, i.e. look for opportunities or look for things that are not panic or are not to do with the downturn, but spend 5% of your time looking for things that might be opportunities. Companies in trouble, things that customers have said, if you're talking to your customers, if there's one thing that we could do for you between now and the end of the year, what would that be? Oh, that's interesting. If 3 customers say the same thing, you've got a product. If 1 customer says it, you've got a sale. So, talk to your customers, but keep it. I call it eyes and ears. Just keep your eyes and ears open and build a bit of time. I'm very structured. I have a work list. It's there, but I keep copious notes. So keep it on your notes and keep 5 or 10% of your time for being brave. So that's it, really. I think one of the questions Alison said was, how do you spot opportunities? And I don't know that that's an answerable question. Apart from, I would say there are two ways of answering that question. One is, it's not about spotting them. If you're building time to be brave, then you need to be in a position where when you spot something, you're able to take advantage of it. So I think being able to take advantage of an opportunity is the better place to be. So having a grip on everything, dealing with things quickly, being in good shape means that when you build your time in and you're brave, then you spot an opportunity, then you're able to do something about it. And that's different to all your competitors who may well still be grappling with, oh my God, we've got to get rid of people now before it's too late and we've left it too long and I want it to be nice and create a family feeling. So I don't think opportunities, there is a surefire way other than eyes and ears and talking to customers and talking to your competitors, or keeping an eye on them at the very least. I think the more important question is being in a position to capitalize on them when you're able to see them and spot them, rather than there is a surefire way of finding them. So there we are. I hope it's a weird one. I'm talking to a mirror above me and talking to a blank screen, so I don't even know if there's anybody still there.
We're still here. Don't panic.
But I'm really open to questions. So and I have one rule: there's no such thing as a daft question. Daft questions are very often the best ones because they're the ones that make you think. So please come up with give me some daft questions as well.
I'm very conscious of the time. There aren't any more questions coming in, so I'm going to end it now just to say thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. So much food for thought there. Really great. And what I'm going to do as well is put up a code in the email that I send out after this. It'll be PyQ Suckley. Thank you. Stop sharing. It all changed. Quincy saying it's very inspiring. Thank you. So if you want to buy the book, there'll be a 30% discount off that. And we're going to be back with another PyQ webinar after the holidays. So stay tuned and I'll let you know when the next one is. It'll probably be at the end of September, but I just haven't confirmed that yet. If you would like to consider becoming a Practical Inspiration author, we work with Nick, we work with a whole load of people with and Glenda, in fact, who's on today, absolutely wonderful thought leaders, then do get in touch, alisonjones.com, or you can find out more about us at practicalinspiration.com. And you can also see there links to the public replays of the previous webinars in the series. We've mentioned a couple of those today. So that's it. Thank you so much again, Nick. Thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope to see you back here soon for another PyQ webinar. Goodbye.
Bye.